Hello everyone, this is Kevin, your Apptrepreneur, and this is going to be more of a serious video than usual because Uber has a safety problem if the numbers are anything to go by. There has been a news story recently that in Maine, drivers are now required to have a second background check before they can continue driving for Uber and Lyft. Uber has their own background check, but that these drivers would have to be vetted through a second system. And the second system in Maine has caused 15% of the drivers to lose their jobs because they had felonies and other issues that the Uber background check system simply did not catch. And it has shed light onto a couple issues. One, that Uber's background check is of course still very flawed. It's still not very effective at catching people at much of anything. But also, how safe is Uber really? And by the way, before we get started on this, I want to state right now, this is not about the New York City terrorist who was an Uber driver. I saw multiple videos. Some were like offended that Uber systems didn't catch it. And there were some who felt there was no way Uber system could catch it. And my stance, of course, is that, I agree with another dissenting voice that, hey, the guy wasn't a terrorist when he signed up to be an Uber driver. And Uber's system cannot tell the future. That's just simply how it is. So this is not going to be about that. I agree that that was like the media being the media and selling the story because they knew that, a terrorist was an Uber driver would make for a great story. And it does not make for a great story because he wasn't a terrorist at the time. And unless the guy posted his Islamic beliefs on social media, there was no way for you to know if he was a terrorist. That said, a lot of the things that the main background check caught that the Uber's background check didn't catch were felonies, sexual assault complaints, and registered sex offenders. Stuff that you would think Uber system would at least be able to catch a couple of those things, but they didn't. And it has been a big, big problem on two ends because Uber's background check for the drivers is not very comprehensive. As terms of the riders, there isn't even a background check. So in a sense, both the rider and the driver are potentially in danger when using the service. And I'm not even saying that in a general, you're technically anything you do is dangerous. This is a whole Uber doesn't do much. They will do just what they need to continue to make money. And that's a sad fact. Now, let's get off topic for a little bit because we have to go back to the beginning, understand how we got to this point. Because Uber, when it started, was building itself on a really radical concept. We had been raised since we were very young to not get into a stranger's car. Don't take a ride with someone you don't know. It's not safe. And it's true. It's not safe to get into a car with someone you don't know. And Uber was building a service where the whole crux of it was you'd get into a car you were unfamiliar with and you would take a ride with someone you don't know. This, by the way, is what the star grade was for, and this is why it's as brutal as it is. Because since a new industry was being created, Travis Kalanick needed to convince people that it was safe to get into a stranger's car. And that's why anything less than a 5 was bad for Uber. It meant that we were not holding a very high standard, and this is a new industry, and we need to prove that our standards are rigorous. They are brutal. And so that is why they maintain us, or they tell us to maintain a 4.6 star grade. Now then, since that has started, people have come to call out that this is really not fair. Anything above 4 stars is very, very good. And once passengers started realizing that 4 or 3 stars were actually fireable grades, a lot of people now give 5 stars even if the driver isn't that good, which defeats the whole point of the star grade system. But it did its mission. It convinced people it was safe to use the service. But with recent stories and developments, that has not turned out to be the case at all. Ignoring the NYC attack altogether, you have had those Uber drivers that, go on killing sprees and they drive around like crazy. They have run people over. On the driver's side, and particularly one I did recently about female Uber drivers, sexual assault and drunken bereavement is very, very common in this. And those are the people Uber doesn't screen at all. Now then, it is true that in both cases, you can send an email of concern, with a strong concern, but it's really interesting how differently Uber treats the concerns. If you are a driver, for example, and you are accused of making a lewd comment or smelling of marijuana or being drunk, Uber's response is to refund the ride and to immediately suspend the driver. And that suspension is almost always followed by termination, because who does the driver complain to, or how does the driver fight back? There is no way for the driver to fight back. And that is a problem, because drivers, some potentially good drivers, lose their ability to drive. I remember being freaked out one day because a driver I had picked up came in the car and he smelled of marijuana. And it wasn't a very long ride, thank goodness, but he got out and I sprayed. But the next person who got in said, do you smoke pot? Are you high? Because the marijuana smell didn't go anywhere. And this is why I always give people who smoke lower star grades, because that smell doesn't go away for a while. And I apologize. I explained what happened, and pretty much turned on my dash cam instantly after that, because I realized it was off. And just to show that I was driving sanely and I wasn't high. Thankfully, there did not appear to be any complaint. In fact, they tipped me $2, so I assume that means they didn't complain. But that is a problem. Drivers are at the mercy of people. And sometimes people make these claims because they just want a free ride. That's it. And the drivers are definitely an unfair advantage. Now then, let's look at the other side. Let's look at the driver's side, or the rider's side, however you want to look at this. Let's say because if you go to that old video, which I'll have a link to at the end of the video for the record, some of these female drivers say that, yeah, guys touched them or they made calls and they reported them to Uber, and Uber assured them they would never be matched up with that passenger again. They were a little bit more wishy-washy whether or not the person still had access to the service or not. And that's a problem for everyone involved, because here's the thing. What if that's all Uber does? What if that's all Uber will ever do? They just won't match you up with that same person again. Well, that guy will still get someone else. What about the next female driver he gets? Maybe that'll happen. Or what about someone who actually assaults you? Here's the thing. For those of you who remember my video about me getting attacked and assaulted by the Korean guy, Uber never committed to suspending his account. Now, the guy got deported, so I assume he won't be using Uber in the US anytime soon. But it was really interesting how you have someone who complains about being shoved against the door, his property is stolen, the police got involved, I had a police report ready for them, and they were kind of like, well, we'll make sure he doesn't get matched up with you again. But what about the next guy? That person could still get hurt. Maybe even worse, that person could get killed. Also, what if this person wants to get into an Uber pool? Now there's a potentially dangerous passenger with an innocent driver and an innocent passenger. That makes it far, far worse. And what compelled me to make this video, because I don't have a surefire solution. I don't know what it is. Obviously, when it's public transportation, there is going to be a certain level of unpredictability, and you are going to deal with people who might not be very stable. You could be working at McDonald's, and before you know it, someone can pull a knife out and stab someone in line because the McDonald's does not have any more Szechuan sauce yet. Szechuan sauce, yeah. It's it's crazy. But the fact that 15% at least, and the number could still grow, of main drivers have been deactivated from Uber because they failed a better background check is a problem. The fact that Uber fights fingerprinting, which would help shed a lot of light on people's criminal history, is a problem. The fact that there is no screening whatsoever for passengers is a problem. And the star grade is not even that reliable. I actually did something last year that was totally against character. I picked up a 4.2 passenger. And the reason I picked him up was because it was a 5.9 surge. So at that point, whatever problems he was going to give me, I felt I was getting paid enough to deal with them. And you know what? He was a really nice guy. His friends in the back were a little obnoxious, I'll admit, but he himself was nice and we had a great conversation. And I actually did something I almost never did. I said, I'm honestly surprised how nice you are, because I don't know if I should tell you this, but your star grade on Uber is not very good. It's at a 4.2, and I don't understand why that is. But he had this very good comeback. He, without hesitation, said, oh, my friends are dicks. My friends are total dicks, and they give the Uber drivers hassle, and they're obnoxious, and they're rude sometimes. And really, the only reason I even get them rides is because I want them to get home safely. Well, okay, that was a good response, but you know what? The star grade doesn't tell me that. It doesn't tell me that at all. And as a result, I almost passed up what ended up being a very profitable ride, a very pleasant ride, because this guy's star grade was way below what I would normally pick up. So even Uber's own star grade system is not a science. It's all opinion. What Uber does need to do in terms of safety is they need to have a better background and screening process for both the drivers and the riders. I fully believe that. They need to, because here's the thing. We, as the drivers, we might be independent contractors, but we are still helping them run their business. They need to assure that we're protected. As for the passengers, yes, they need to assure they're protected too, but they also need to not, and this is where it gets so complicated. And so, because when the passenger complains, like, here's the thing. If someone's been on Uber for a long time, and then they make a complaint about a driver that is very serious in nature, okay, take it seriously. And then look at that driver's history and see were any other complaints made. And if they weren't, try to find out why. But there are people who are on the Uber and Lyft platform, and they make these complaints all the time, and it never sends a red flag to Uber that, hey, this person is just trying to get free rides, and they are potentially getting many good drivers fired as a result. And that is not helpful for Uber, because Uber's biggest expense is referral bonuses and getting new drivers. And it might behoove them to keep the quality drivers, even if they don't want to raise the rates or pay us better or whatever. Maybe at least in this area where they don't need to be fired, maybe they could find a way to sell. Man, the more I talk about it, the more frustrating it is. It really is. And the thing is, I'm not the only one who believes this way. Harry Campbell of the Rideshare Guy agrees, and I'm going to link to his article below too, because this is where I got the news, so that's where you go. And he admits that there is an issue as well. Will Uber ever do anything about it? I don't know. Here's one of the problems, that Travis Kalanick destroyed Uber so much that I think these are situations and these are issues that their new CEO should be looking at very closely. But he's too busy cleaning up London and Brazil and fighting boardroom drama and worrying about a SoftBank deal that may or may not go through because of Travis Kalanick. I think, will our new CEO be able to do anything? I don't think he will. I don't think he will. I think there's just too much damage that has been done by this man. And the fact that man is still there, still causing trouble, I don't know. So, if the New York terrorist connection is good for one thing, maybe it'll force someone at Uber to say, we need to actually have better background checks, even if it wouldn't have caught this guy anyway. But But now it's time for people to share their stories. What's it like being an Uber driver and being harassed by passengers? What's it like to be an Uber passenger made to feel unsafe by an Uber driver? These stories need to start being shared, and there needs to be an emphasis that Uber's background check doesn't work. And their safety measures are not really measures. They don't have guardrails, nothing like that. And they need to be held more accountable. I don't know the full solution. I don't have the answer. Although I will say, at least when it comes to screening the passengers, something would be better than nothing. So, what do you folks think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I would love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. And if you enjoy videos like this, because videos like this do get demonetized, consider becoming a Patreon member and donating $1 or whatever you feel like it. $5 to get access to exclusive videos. And please, flame responsibly. Have a good one.